Change is not transactional. It's transformational. Strong believer of those words, Melissa Bradley. In a minute, we will be talking to the New Majority Ventures founder and managing partners, Melissa Bradley, about a new role that she's taken on and the impact she's continuing to make in the venture capital world. You're in the Enterprise Zone at the Nasdaq. Hello, everyone. This is Jabari Young, senior writer at Forbes, and I'm at the Nasdaq MarketSite. And I'm joined by Melissa Bradley. She is the founder and managing partner of New Majority Ventures, right? Formerly 1863 Ventures, a Forbes BOK member, right? Forbes BOK 50 member, Forbes 50 over 50 lister, managing partner now at Black Economics Alliance Foundation, right? Their Black Economics Alliance Entrepreneurs Fund. Melissa, you got a lot going on, right? I had to get through all those titles, right? Anything? Am I missing anything?
Professor at Georgetown.
Professor at Georgetown.
And a proud parent. And
Six kids,
and married for 22 years.
There you go. Oh my God, and a mentor to me, like there you go.
Sure,
right.
I'm honored.
Yeah, you be my investor too.
Absolutely, we got some money. Absolutely.
Thank you, Melissa. Welcome to the Nasdaq.
Thank you for having me.
I've been here before, plenty of times before.
New York is my favorite city.
Absolutely, yes. Well, listen, give me a stock. We're here. What's worked for Melissa Bradley all these years? Something that's strong that maybe nobody never talks about.
So it's interesting. I logged on this morning because I noticed I operate differently when I'm in New York.
Yeah.
And I was like, how's my portfolio doing? So my favorite today is CrowdStrike.
CrowdStrike. Oh,
so it's an infrastructure play. And I mean, I have a lot in the portfolio, but I realized that for a long time, and I got my kids involved, I would say, like, purchase stock of things you buy.
Yes.
But then I realized all of those things don't operate if there's not a strong foundation.
That's
so
right.
I started with looking at some infrastructure, so that's my favorite today.
Yeah, CrowdStrike. I mean, they went through some issues before.
They sure did.
But I mean, listen, they are vital to the very security, our digital infrastructure. And you talk about all the things that are happening around the world and security issues.
That's right. But see, it's analogous to black people.
Yes.
I mean, I've been through a lot, but you need us.
There you go. There you go. What about the soundtrack to 2025? A lot is going on so far this year, Melissa. And you still got 6 months to go. Let's keep Melissa Bradley motivated in 2025.
So I do a lot of cryo. So I listen to Persuasive, which is Doechii and SZA.
Doechii and SZA. Did you see SZA in concert ever?
I did not.
No.
I feel like I'm too old to go by myself, so I have to wait to take my kids.
There's no such thing as old.
Yeah,
well developed.
Okay, well developed.
Yeah.
But I'm waiting to take my kids. So when they're ready to go, I'll go.
Yeah. Well, listen, when y'all can take me too, because I'll go, because I know I can't afford the tickets. I'm looking at it, right? Her and then the Beyonce. Those things are massive.
I saw Beyonce for Renaissance, and it was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not going to check out on the Cowboy Carter tour?
I don't like to go for albums I haven't gotten through yet.
Okay.
And so, like, Renaissance, and I don't want to mess it up, no disrespect, but like Renaissance to me, I think I would say, oh, it's Cowboy Carter like Renaissance. I don't want to do that to Cowboy Carter. I think Renaissance was the best concert I've ever seen in my life, and I have been front row to Prince. It was the best entertaining ever.
Yeah, wow, I mean, it's crazy. I've been to Prince's house, but he didn't perform for us. He just was, just around, walking him in silk pajamas. It was just good to see him.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Listen, we jump in and you go into a third grade class, and they say, what is it that you do, Miss Bradley? What do you tell these third graders? You tell them, hey, I give money to people. What do you tell them?
I tell them that I invest in people who look like me, period.
Nice. Do they have any follow-up?
Oftentimes they want to know what that means, because then they go, oh, were you investing in athletes? And I'm like, no. And then
a little, your environment, right?
A little. But then I say to them, like, where is it that you shop? And is there an alternative? And I'd say I probably invest in that alternative.
Nice. I love that. Well, listen, let's get into the alternatives and the shopping and all that, because you rebranded, right, 1863 Ventures. You kind of shuttered that to open the way for New Majority Ventures, right, for-profit multimedia company. This is a collaboration, a partnership between 1863, which you founded, as well as Connect Energy Entertainment,
yep.
am I mistaken?
That's right.
Take me inside of this rebrand. What's changed? What's going on with New Majority Ventures?
So when 1863 Ventures started, we were not supposed to be here forever.
Yeah.
And so that was key. And this would not be the first organization that I've shut down. I don't like to do things unless
for the record, the 1863 was the incubator program.
That's correct.
Accelerator program.
Exactly.
Out of Washington, D.C.
And I don't like to do things if they don't work.
Yeah.
And so it was working, but not at the volume that we wanted. I have a goal of creating $100 billion of new wealth by and for New Majority founders by 2030. Time is ticking.
That's right.
And what I realized was we did not have the capacity by running various accelerator programs to get to the critical mass required to get to $100 billion. So I could have kept doing what I was doing and fallen short. I could have said, wait, let's try something different and go all in and really try and hit that goal.
Yeah.
So 1863 was an accelerator. We still do acceleration, but in a very different way. So now we are a for-profit company that provides online training B2B and B2C.
Yeah.
About 3 years in, we realized that there were not a lot of folks who were doing accelerated programs for Black people back in the day, and there weren't a lot that were doing it for growth companies. 88% of programs out there for startups, nothing after. So when you think about businesses are failing, that was a unique opportunity for us. And so we started selling to other companies, so we still do that. And then we're actually launching our consumer division. We did a soft launch, but it'll all come out the fall.
Yeah.
So for me, it was much more important of how do I get to my goal than how do I just keep doing what was okay, but almost too comfortable.
Yeah, but I looked at the website, right, and it says, I'll read it. We are a new majority, a company on a mission to celebrate, support, and encourage you, the women of color, LGBTQ, and immigrant builders of today. We are changing the narrative, putting your stories at the center of everything we do, because new majority is shaping tomorrow. Elaborate on that statement.
So the reality is, globally, people of color are the majority.
Yeah.
It's only in the United States that we're struggling and grappling with that, but I think it's completely based on fear. When you think about the fastest growing segment of founders, they're all people of color, and specifically Black women.
Yeah.
When you think about the changing demographic in this country, it is people of color. That scares people. I like to live in facts. I'm a finance major. Data factually says the fastest segment of founders are people of color. And so that's where I think we need to focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you look at how, again, we have gone through all this ideology change right now, are you facing any backlash because of your mission?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the backlash is less around people not still believing it's important. I think it's them trying to navigate the larger political and macroeconomic environment. Prime example, in our first fund, I'd say the majority of our folks are CPG companies. And they're in all the natural stores. They're in Target. What Target has said publicly is not what they're doing privately, right? Our folks have not been displaced. They have not been put off shelves. And so I think that's the hard part.
So I can go back in there now?
You make your own decision.
Haven't been.
But I will say this. It has been controversial, and people are like, you crazy,
yeah,
among other things. But the reality is, where else are folks going to go? Like, we can't wait for us to build the next Black Target or the next Black Amazon. Yeah. And when you think about the concessions, the margins, the marketing rates that an entire advisory council of entrepreneurs, all people of color, gave guidance to Target, it is probably still the best place for them to be. You're not going to get a cap in somewhere else.
That's right. You're
not going to get that support. You're not going to get chargebacks. You're not going to get any of that. You're not going to get marketing support. And so I think we can decide if we want to be completely 100% altruistic, but then we're waiting, because I still don't know what other people are shopping right now. Or we can recognize that we are all hashtag work in progress. What they did publicly, they should definitely be ashamed. And they should be penalized for that. But don't screw up the entrepreneurs. For them, it's the only way many of them are able to make money, because they haven't been able to get into other stores. So I just think we have to be thoughtful and measured in what our reaction is to an action, particularly if we don't really understand it and think about the economic implications it's having. Because sure, Target care less, but you are actually hurting the Black founders, where if that's the only shelf they've been able to get on, now their people aren't there.
Yeah, and it seems to be hurting their bottom line.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
I had to get rid of that.
Yeah,
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. And I only ask you that because, we were both out in the Milken Institute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I'm not going to say the individual's name. First, probably want me to say it. But as I'm talking to these people, and I'm like asking them the same question, and he says, yeah. And actually, one sponsor asked us to remove Black from the actual headline. And I'm like, whoa. And he says, we can't do that. Right. And I'm thinking, wow, these are the type of things that are going on right now. Have you sensed that?
But I have to say, that's not new.
Yeah.
So when I had my first organization, we actually did youth entrepreneurship. I had a well-known national funder, I'm not going to say their name, come to my board meeting and say, we will give you a $5 million grant, but you've got to do this. And the board was like, we're going to go whatever she said. And I said, I will absolutely not do that, because it fundamentally changes our mission. So I think we have to understand that this is a very different moment, but there has always been an historical movement to basically make people feel comfortable, right? But Peter Arnault, who's an economist, said there is nothing that is profitable that is also comfortable. And so I think right now we're just in a stage of America where people are like, I'm petrified, things are changing too fast, I want to grab onto what's comfortable, but that's not profitable.
Yeah, what would you tell that entrepreneur who is petrified right now? Because again, I was looking at videos circulating around about the sister who owns the Lip Bar, and her business is suffering because of the boycotting at Target, which her audience is, or her consumer mostly are Black. And if you're not showing up at Target, you're not buying her stuff, and so it's a trickle down.
And it's a ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
So even though Melissa at Lip Bar is in other places, what happens is you then have to figure out, where do I spend my marketing dollars, right? Where do I spend my energy? And so then it just creates distraction across all the channels. So there's a ripple effect. But I tell founders all the day, you just got to stay at it, right? I mean, anybody who starts a business, you already know you are special. You already know the headwinds. The headwinds start with your family. When I started my first, mom was like, when are you going to get a job? And I was like, I have a job. She did not acknowledge I had a job till I worked for Obama. So I think we have to understand there's tiers of headwinds, and you've just got to figure out what is your level of grit and resilience to keep going. And if now's not the right time, shut it down.
Yeah.
If you want to keep going, keep going. But I think the biggest thing to understand is that entrepreneurship is not an automatic pathway to wealth, and that's what you should be focused on. Is this going to help improve my situation, or is this going to drain all of my finances?
Yeah, you said that same thing when we were out there in Beverly Hills, and then you said, and if it's not, get a job.
Please
and I was
get
like,
a job.
God, darn, that's
Unfortunately, you can't get a good government job anymore, but get a job.
Get a job.
Get a job, yeah.
Well, speaking of jobs, you took on another role. Again, the Black Economic Alliance Foundation. They have their Black Economic Alliance Entrepreneurs Fund.
Yes.
That's a long fund name.
I know. I know.
You got to shrink it down.
We just
Now,
say BEA Venture Fund. That's
Yeah,
what it
VEA Entrepreneurs Fund. You know, listen, you're the managing partner there. And again, this is a fund that initially, I believe it started in 2021. Wells Fargo put up 20 million commitment over 5 years. It's raised so far, if looking at the SEC filing, 28.5 million. Which is goal.
Close some more. Yep.
Yeah, the goal is 50.
Correct.
One of the investments that you've already made was Unrivaled Basketball League. We had David Lee. You were talking to him, a very good friend of mine. I'm supporting him.
Yes.
And some investors in that, Dawn. I see Dawn Staley in there, according to PitchBook. Giannis Antetokounmpo.
We got
Juju
it all.
Watkins.
We got it all.
And so you have a lot, and they're also looking at financial inclusion, health, wellness, sustainable communities, and what you call narrative change, right? That's what you're looking at. Unrivaled fits that. Take me inside of this role that you have now, because this is this is a full-time job for you.
I'm very clear that
You drink a lot of Red Bull.
Well, I was going to say, no, I don't. I used to, but not anymore.
Matcha tea? So you got to explain, how do you stay up?
Water and tequila.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
That's it. I have one goal, but many roles.
Yeah.
So I don't look at them as jobs. They are seamless in terms of how I spend my day, and they're the consistency of that goal is I want to help Black people.
Yeah.
Period. You know, I think the opportunity to be invited to run this fund was offered to me, and I declined because I was still doing some other stuff. And as time went on, the leaders of the organization made a very strong case, and I said, I will do it with some conditions. One, I wanted to have an all-Black female team. We have that because that has not been done as far as I know, across the board. We wanted to be clear around who our investors were. We wanted to have a slightly different investment thesis and portfolio management strategy. And they said, go for it. And those various pillars are very much around closing the wealth gap, right? We want to invest in wealth builders. And so when you think about financial inclusion, obvious. Climate communities, I don't think people realize. I was in Harlem, I got asthma. I think people don't understand what that really means for us economically. Health and wellness, I think, is obvious. But narrative change, or what we now call systems change, is the part that's most important. Data has said, if you think about what Citibank said, that racism is costing us like $16+ billion. And then even look before that, the Kerner Commission report that said this country, my words, is going to go to hell if it does not understand the economic contributions and value of Black people. That report got tossed. We have a history and a trajectory that says we are willing to undermine the economy of this country because of racism. And so we really want to think about where can we have systems change. And so the lever for 3-on-3 basketball is, one, it's part owned by the women.
Yeah.
Right? Part two, much better endorsement deals.
Yeah.
Part three, if you had a chance to go, it's slightly outside Miami, so let's not get people scared. Amazing facility.
Yeah.
Has thought about every aspect of the female athlete, down to kids, down to makeup, down to wardrobe, down to how they practice and when. But the biggest thing is, if you think about all the trades just happened in WNBA, they happened in Florida. So they have shifted the locus of power to be where the women are. You got the CBA coming up.
That's right.
It may or may not happen. But if it doesn't, it will be because Unrivaled has now raised the bar in terms of I don't have to go abroad to play, and I should get paid what I'm worth. To me, that's the most exciting investment because I'm a sports person, but I also think it's one of the most important investments that we've made because the signal effect, the narrative change, the system change, and just the quality of play is all there.
Yeah, I mean, sports is certainly one of those. When I tell people, we go through a lot of issues as human beings, but the common denominator of what everybody seems to have in common is sports, right? We love it. Are you any other leagues that you're looking at outside? I mean,
we're looking.
In WSL as well?
We're looking, right? I mean, our fund, we want to be careful, right? We got to diversify so we don't be overweighted. But I do think that where we are right now, we are definitely looking at some other leagues or other types of sports. Not just leagues and not just full professional, maybe some semi-professional. And then also just thinking about how do we do a carve out and place it in other funds that are exclusively much larger than us and also doing women's sports.
Yeah, yeah. What's it like being like the day-to-day of such a fund? Like, how do you manage?
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So I wake up and I'm really excited about my
After you read
portfolio
Forbes.com.
company. After I read Forbes.com and watching TV, I get really excited. Then if somebody decides they want to send me a news article about the demise of Black founders, then I'm like, why?
All right.
Then I spend time fundraising, and people tell me, well, you know, we don't do DEI investing anymore. And I said, well, that's great, because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
We expect to make 3 to 5x return. We're expecting exits. We're Series A, Series B. There's a market gap, blah, blah, blah.
Do you get the yes after that? Did you clear the
I get the, oh, okay, I'm willing to talk about it. You know, all people see is a deck. So what they see is Black people on the deck, Black people on the team, Black people on the IC, and they're
It
like,
must mean it's DEI.
it must be right. And
Not business, DEI.
And in fact, we have white founders in our portfolio. I mean, the CEO of Unrivaled is a white guy.
That's right.
We have an investment that I can't say yet because we haven't finalized the docs, but it's a white gentleman, but he is doing amazing things where the majority of his customers are people of color, particularly Black women, and really trying to focus on reducing their debt.
Wow. Wow. So that's a way to kind of shut people up. Hey, these people are investing in the groups that look nothing like them.
Exactly.
What's been the big negative surprise of it, though? Like something maybe that day-to-day, the roller coaster that you just don't enjoy?
I think the biggest surprise has been the underestimation of how hard it is to be in the VC/PE space. You know, after 2020, everybody decided they wanted to run a fund. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so I think what's happening is that those of us who've been doing it for years and or have some experience, we're being compiled with folks who are still trying. And I think everybody deserves a chance. But what's happening is, if you look at us as a collective, while there's been a majority increase in the number of Black GPs, based on the stage, not everybody's done well because markets are going crazy. And so we all get lumped together. And so I think, unfortunately, that's the greatest disappointment, is that people are unable to say, I see your special sauce. They just go, we know Black founders, Black GPs, y'all are all struggling. And that's not necessarily true.
Yeah. Well, when you look, before we move into your background right fast, the headwinds and tailwinds of the venture capital space, like, listen, the IPO market is dry right now.
You got that
so there's
right.
very few exits, right? There's a lot of dry powder on the sidelines, right? Trillions of dollars. But then you have those other things. You have geopolitical issues. You have tariffs. You know, I don't know how much you pay attention to the U.S. national debt issues that we got on. Right, the big, beautiful bill, which might, throw some wrenches into things. What are other headwinds of the VC, PE space that you're looking at that you're paying attention to?
I think just the general skittishness of market makers, right? I think that no one can really say what's going on. I haven't talked to any more of our more traditional analysts that say, oh, it's going to be well. I think there's just such a high level of uncertainty that is what's making everybody scared. We have been continuing to raise money. We've had great success with individuals and with family offices who are much more focused on, I want my money back, but I'm also focused on impact. So I think in the end we'll be just fine. Our final close is the end of the year, but there's definitely a lot of headwinds, and I think the biggest one is just uncertainty.
Yeah. Are you expected to hit the 50 by the end of the year?
I expect to hit the 50, if not exceeded.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Love to hear it.
Yes.
Take me a step back, right? Go back into your childhood. You grew up in NYC right here, right? Single parent. Your dad died of a heart attack when you were just 3 months. Did that impact you growing up at all?
It didn't impact me until I was older to realize, like, oh, okay, there's things going on. And my mom was an older parent. She was 40 when I was born. And so I think
she dropped out of high school to take care of her grandma.
That's right. So she was actually the first Black teller at Carver Bank.
Wow.
And so I think the acknowledgement and loss probably didn't hit me till later. We all grow up and we have our childhood trauma we got to manage. So luckily, I've managed that. But I don't think I missed it until I realized it wasn't just about the person, but it was the dynamic, right? That if there had been another parent, would our financial situation would have been better? Would my mother have had more support? Would she have been able to do things she wanted to do that she gave up because she wanted to make sure that I was well and my sister was well? So I think that's where it came into play.
Yeah. But as a kid breaking up on a Saturday, right, obviously, cartoons, like, what are you watching? Like, what's keeping you fueled
Dude,
as a
there
kid?
were no cartoons, man. When I woke on Saturday, there was a chore list. There was a vacuum cleaner. There was a mop. I finally got to where I could play, Columbia Records. I had my 8-track. I could put in an 8-track and
While
listen
you're doing chores.
But we had to compromise. My mom was a big Barry White fan, so we put in Barry White. I didn't do anything until I had chores. We had one TV. It was black and white. It had bunny ears, and the TV was, if I was lucky, I even got to see it that day.
Yeah. Well, when it was on, was it something that you would always go to?
When it was on, we watched the news a lot, and then we'd watch your typical, Sanford and Son and, whatever we had.
Yeah.
But I would say the majority of it was news.
Yeah, man, I love the Good Times. I watch Good Times still today.
Still.
They were going through stagflation. I'm like, that might be coming. Right?
You got that
let's,
right.
let's get prepared.
You got that right.
But it was a key moment that I saw that you talk about all the time in your upbringing, where your mom showed you a map of the U.S. presidents, right? And at the time, there was no black person on there, no woman on there.
Yep.
And, your mom says, not yet, right?
Right.
And then years later, we see President Obama. When that happened, when we finally saw President Obama, did that kind of solidify that anything really is possible? My mom told me this years and years ago, and I couldn't see it, but now I see it. This is possible.
Yeah. So, essentially, the map was to demonstrate that I could do anything I wanted.
Right.
And I kept saying, you keep saying that, but I don't really see the data that says that. And when he became president, I think it was very exciting. I have a picture of my mom with our youngest kids as he was being announced. Best picture ever. But then I ended up going to work for him, which is the only job she ever remembers, by the way. And I had a chance to have her come to the White House and meet him. And she said, I have waited for you all my life. And he said, thank you. That to me said anything is possible, because it wasn't just that he got in. It was the fact that I was able to close the loop for my mom, who was able to see that in her lifetime and be able to talk to that person.
Yeah.
That was it for me.
Yeah, I love it. And that quote that you always says, do not allow whatever you see to determine whatever you can be.
Absolutely.
And that's something that she instilled in you.
Absolutely.
Do you instill that into your kids now?
Absolutely.
Well, they see a lot, though, right? You can live from Martha's Vineyard, so they can see that.
Well, you know what's interesting? With our 6 kids,
7 if you adopt me.
well, it's funny because we actually have 8 technically. So
Okay. 9 if you adopt me.
9.
Yeah.
We're just taking them all in. But we have a young man, Dion Jones, who we met when I was a professor, and he came in, and we have another woman who's in the vineyard we've taken in. So we'll probably never be done. But I think what we've tried to instill in all of our kids, birthed or not, is know who you are. Because everybody else around you is going to try to tell you something different.
Yeah.
And so I think for the kids growing up now, sure, they have a lot of things, but they don't get everything. And I think as the last 2 go off to college, we are very clear, this is a whole new world.
That's right.
And so again, just the only thing you can change is who you are and how you show up.
Yeah. I respect your past again, and I know you're now a parent and happily married and all
Yes.
that, but when you look back at, you went to Georgetown, now you're a professor there. What led you to finance? Like, what made you go into a finance major? Most people don't want to. They do communications because it's easy.
So I was a nerd growing up, and so we had lots of books in my house, and I read a lot of books, and I read a lot of biographies, mostly of black people. And I would say, wow, they're really successful, but unfortunately, the arc of that success would drop because somebody had mismanaged their money or they didn't know where it was. And I was like, well, this is absolutely crazy. And the other piece, as I got older and before I went to college, I realized 2 + 2 is always 4. 3 times 3 is always 9. American history changes depending on who's the narrator. And so I like to live in the world of certainty.
Yeah.
And so finance was extremely appealing to me. I also, accounting, but that looks backwards. I wanted to be able to look forward and think about how could I actually change what's going to happen. So finance has always been important to me. And I think what's unfortunate is that we do a lot of program partnerships. And I always say to particularly black women, do not let the numbers define your value. They are nothing but numbers that share a moment in time. And so for me, finance was the only thing that I could major in.
Yeah. Well, take me back to that, time when you were going to Kinko's. Put that business plan out, right?
Woo!
And you're dropping it off and you wanted to get it printed. And I can relate, right? I used to drop my resume off to
That's it.
post offices.
These people don't know.
They don't understand
They
the
don't
struggle.
know.
They don't
They
know,
don't know.
Melissa. Right? Absolutely,
Dial-up,
right? At the
AOL,
stamp,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
They don't know
yeah.
DSL.
Nope.
I called her, and so, I understand the struggle. Again, mailing my resumes at the post office and then calling sports editors to see if they got it. But here you are at Kinko's, printing out your business plan after the SB, Small Business Administration challenges you, right?
Yep.
What are you learning about yourself in that process when you're in that Kinko's? You take me back to that
Yeah.
spot, right? What are you learning about yourself?
So I went to Kinko's before I went to the SBA.
Yeah.
And you had to drop it off and you come back the following week. And when I came back the following week, I learned 3 things about myself. One, the woman said to me, you will never get a loan because of 3 factors. And I said, okay, great, what are they? Come on, let's go. She goes, you're black, can't change that. Because you're a woman, can't change that. And because you don't have any money. I said, well, of course not, because I just graduated from Georgetown. And I realized then the 3 things were, 1, my mother's advice was best, walk away. Do not confront ignorance. The second was, do not let somebody else determine the success of your dreams. And the third one is, there's only person that can stop you is you. And so when I left that building, I was briefly devastated. I called my mom. She was like, can't say it on now, but yep, screw them. And I kept going. And I ended up bootlegging it in my house. I had my college roommate. She was in law school. She was like, if you ever need me to cover your rent, girl, I got you. Thank God I didn't need it. And it just took off. And ultimately, the private equity firm said, we want to take on your customers. And I was like, great, let's move on.
Yeah, because you sold that business like 18 months later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and here you are today.
24.
24, let me get it right, yeah. But, and again, you worked under 2 president administrations, right? Clinton and Obama, and
Correct.
under Obama, you helped to start AmeriCorps, right? And also the...
Well, they were already there, so I was running the White House Social Innovation
Right,
Fund.
yes, and then My Brother's Keeper, you
Correct.
helped with that as well. Well, you always say, you know, being an entrepreneur, you have to have a certain level of risk tolerance.
Absolutely.
What's your risk tolerance in 2025?
It's high.
Yeah?
It's high. I mean, you know, I'm 50.
Why is it high?
For me, I'm 50.
I know you always say it's 55. I'm not doing it forever. You got to scale.
No, but I'm 57 years
57?
old.
Yeah.
I've seen everything that I can. I've been blessed to do, I've never had a job I didn't like. I've only had 2 jobs, but I've never really had a job I didn't like. My kids are going off to college. I've done what I can. They're 18. The other ones are older and out. I have nothing to lose. Like houses, monies, car, that ain't nothing. I have absolutely nothing to lose. And so I am all in on being loud, proud, and factual.
Yeah. See, I love talking to people like you, especially when people get older. It's like, listen,
there's a level of freedom.
No tongue no more, right? That's it. There's a level of freedom.
I'm holding it all in now.
They can't touch you. They can't touch you.
Well, they can, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, when I first started Agency 3, it was funny. It was all black men that I had hired, just by happenstance, and there was another gentleman who was older, and then youngins, and we were like, "What would you die for?" And they couldn't think of anything, and I was like, I would die for my people. And they were like, what? And I was like, it's just a generation, right? Like, I don't exist in and of myself. There is no Melissa Bradley without my mom, Joan. There's no Melissa Bradley without every other black person that's walked into a building before me. And so I've got to figure out what is my contribution, because I'm trying to leave it better than when I came.
Yeah. Well, a lot of your work, right, if you go back, it's been, you know, really catered in D.C., DMV area, and you've been really trying to change the mindset of entrepreneurs, allow them to believe that stuff is possible. You don't have to end up like your grandparents did or your mom, dad. You can think differently.
Yep.
You can look at entrepreneurship as this thing to get you out of the circumstance. That mindset change, right? It probably worked for a few years. Are we still in that? Do you still see that we're going through that mindset shift?
I think what we have right now is a mindset shift, because we can't control anything else, right? But we have over 10,000 entrepreneurs all across the country, as well as in Canada and in Africa. And I think what is universal about all those geographic differences is you have full control of how you show up as a founder. You have the opportunity to build your culture and change it. You have the opportunity to read those financials and take away whatever your perspective is. You have full control. I think what's happened, particularly for founders of color and women, is that we don't know how to walk into that power because it's so new. I think what I would say to entrepreneurs now is be mindful of your risk tolerance, right? There is no pride that you have emptied out your 401k to start a business that does not succeed, right? I care about wealth building, and I recognize that entrepreneurship is one path. What we have seen is that while most businesses fail within 5 years, the research we've done says that black businesses last at least 8.5 years. But that longevity does not correlate to capital, access to capital revenue. And my prior research showed that it costs at least $250,000 for a black founder, more, $250,000 more for a black founder to start the same exact business as their white peer. So we're already in the hole, and then we keep going, and we're keeping these businesses, and nobody's giving us capital. I think we have to figure out, are we willing to risk wealth to get more? I'm a gambler. I go to Vegas. Sure. But not everybody can do that. If you've got kids, you've got family, you've got black tax. And so I just think we have to be very thoughtful and figure out at the onset, what is our risk to lose everything? Because it is possible.
Yeah, most definitely. Martha's Vineyard, you held your annual retreat there, and you got a preview coming up?
Always thinking about what are the solutions to where we are, right? I think it's easy to sit back and say, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But the reality is, it's going to stay that way unless we really focus on changing it. So I think really focusing on solutions, hearing from business leaders, obviously hearing from politicians, but also just thinking about how to get the community involved.
Well, what's the one solution that maybe nobody's talking about that you're thinking about today that's keeping you up at night, and you hope to find an answer at that retreat when Forbes BOK is there and we're all sitting back drinking Sable, Malcolm D. Lee's
There you
brand,
go.
right?
I'm in for that. You know, I think what keeps me up at night right now is how do we separate out ego from economic success? At some point in time, no disrespect, we don't need any more hair care.
That's right.
We don't need any more lotion. No. We don't need it, and not because we don't deserve it, but because there's just not enough shelf space. Yeah. And so I think what keeps me up at night is how can we think about consolidation? So consolidation as preservation, not as loss of power. And so I think that's what keeps me up at night.
How do we get other entrepreneurs in the areas like mining and other manufacturing? Like as I drive through some counties in urban America, I'm like, who owns that concrete spot? And are you in on the ETA? I know there's that movement going on, entrepreneur,
acquisition.
Yes, through acquisition, right? Are you in on that? And how can more entrepreneurs maybe do that? Because I saw a tombstone maker that's near me, and I'm like, well, I know he ain't going out of business, and he's still here. And I know there's a lot of people who are willing and ready to sell their business, but their kids don't want it, right? Everybody's on social media.
That's right.
Like, what are you finding about other industries that Black entrepreneurs need to look at?
So when we first started, we had all kinds. We had construction, we had cabling, we had folks who actually have laid all the concrete at our airports in the DMV. So we have never specifically said, you have to be a tech company. So I wish we had more of those conversations. I think entrepreneurship through acquisition is real. Also, a very good friend of mine, and I'm on the advisory board, but Apis and Heritage, A&H, they are a fund, two Black men, both out of Morehouse, who have decided that, acquisition is great, but that depends on where the company is. So they, to your point, they recognize that many businesses, there's no generational continuation. So they go and look for businesses, irrespective of who the owner is, white guy, black guy, white woman, whatever, but where there's majority employees of color. And they buy that business and they turn it into an ESOP.
That's right.
And so I just think we've got to extend those understanding of what are the pathways that lead to wealth creation and just get out of it's only one way. And diversification is the key to any successful portfolio.
Yeah, most definitely. Top advice to building a business, if you had to say it right now?
Top advice is two things, if I can. Know your numbers, because they do not lie, and they tell you exactly where you should be going and where you should be retreating. And the other thing is check in with yourself. I've had a couple of founders who've come to me and say, is it okay if I shut down because I am not well? And I was like, absolutely, you've got to be well first.
Yeah, most definitely. I thought you were going to say the hire slow, fire fast line.
That too. I think everybody says that, right? Everybody says, but I think it applies, right? Because I think that too many times, particularly Black founders, we keep, the grind mentality, and then we end up in the hospital. And so I think sometimes you have to fire yourself first because this is just not good for you.
Yeah, I know. I was just telling my uncle, I said, man, she had this great line, which is, started from the bottom, and it sounds good, but it's like, think about the weight that carries.
And we're already carrying weight.
Yeah,
we're already carrying weight.
Get into some fun stuff here as I let you go, because you're busy, Melissa. I know you want to get back to your nice house in Martha's Vineyard.
I'm actually
and all
going
that.
back to our house in D.C.
Okay, all right. And then after that, go to Martha's Vineyard.
Then I'll be in Martha's Vineyard, yes.
$1 million question, right? How'd you make it?
Selling the business.
Selling the business. How'd you spend it?
Investing in other companies.
Investing in other companies. I love it. So no regrets.
No.
I
none.
love that. I love that. Gen AI, right? When you think about it, and just AI in general, what aren't people talking about? And again, I'll use the headline. I read this Wall Street Journal headline from June 1st, and it said AI is learning to escape human control. Right? And the line in that first sentence is an artificial intelligence model did something last month in May 2025 that no machine was ever supposed to do. It rewrote its own code to avoid being shut down. When you hear that and you think about AI, what aren't people talking about, and what are you looking at?
I think people are talking about it, but not very explicitly. I think what they're not talking about is garbage in, garbage out. We, as a community of people of color, are not controlling what goes in. And so I think it's garbage all the time. So I think for me, what I'm optimistic about is that we need to see more founders in this space, and we're beginning to see them, who are thinking about how are they managing LLMs? How are they changing what gets put into the data? How are they churning, and what are the different markers they're putting together to drive the algorithms, to drive the logic? We have a company, Black guy, Chris, who started Path AI. He was a Shark Tank guy, sold his first company, doing amazing things as it relates to education. So I think, one, we have to don't think of it as the enemy, think of it as how can we control it? And two, think about where are there industries that actually could allow us to leapfrog that we haven't been able to do before.
Yeah, most definitely. Nielsen says Black America's spending power reached $2.1 trillion by 2026. When you hear that figure, what comes to mind?
I wish we were spending it more on Black communities.
I love it. No disagreement from me. Look around the world. What country, what continent does Melissa Bradley throw her money into right now?
Africa.
Africa. Why Africa?
Technologically advanced.
I hear they have some great high-speed rails. And I'm like,
I mean, the rails, but I mean, think about it. It was an economy and a sense of community that was built on Wi-Fi, right? There's no infrastructure that we're battling against. I mean, it is just much more technologically advanced than we are, although nobody wants to admit that. But I also would say, put that aside, look at the massive people that are there, right? Like,
$100 million in Nigeria alone or something?
So you think about market opportunity, right? It's definitely developing. So you've got lots of market opportunity, and you've got a huge total addressable market. What are we even talking about?
Yeah, most definitely. 3 books that inspire you to perform your best or that motivate you. What are they?
I'm in the middle of reading The Creative Act by Rubin. Interesting. I'm going to sound like a nerd, I loved Outlive by Peter Attia. And then I guess the one that I haven't started, but I'm on my way, is Quit.
Quit. What is that? Does it sound...
So it's supposed to be helping, and it's important for me, but helping people understand when it's okay to stop.
Wow.
And I think as I continue to build this new company and we're going to be training founders, I want to make sure that I am holding them accountable to make sure that they have a safe place to say, I need to not do this and do something else.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, listen, this last one, I get you out of here on a Good to Great, is Jim Collins' great book that he wrote, Good to Great. And you probably know this better than most. And you're definitely looking at it now because you got 50 million raised and you got to distribute that. But what's the difference between a good entrepreneur and a great one?
A good entrepreneur has a good idea that could make lots of money. A great entrepreneur knows how to build the business and the organization and the people to actually generate the cash.
That's right, because it's the culture and the people that make it go.
That's all it is.
Yeah, unless the computers take over. They're not shutting down now, so I don't know, right? We could be sitting up there asking, we are the new Jurassic Park. They're going to say something called and different, right?
Well, see, this is where I'm counting on my brothers and sisters in Africa. I feel like they already got this under control.
Yeah, there we go. Well, listen, when you go over there, let me know so I can be on
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Melissa Bradley, definitely appreciate the time.
Thank you,
New Majority Ventures, congratulations on that, as well as the Black Economic Entrepreneurs Fund. It's going to do some great stuff there. Let us know when you get to the 50. We'd love to have you back to talk about it.
You got it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Melissa Bradley, the Enterprise Zone, Nasdaq MarketSite. Thank you for watching.